to Flying Solo with Kat. This podcast mainly focuses on Star Wars and shipping. That being said, I also want to have the opportunity to talk about new things coming up in media, such as TV shows, movies, and especially theme parks. Each episode will be titled accordingly, so no need to fret. If an episode is talking about a topic that you're not interested in or triggers you in some way, I would suggest waiting for the next episode. You really won't be missing anything. There's no pressure at all. This podcast is here for people to learn and understand concepts that they weren't already privy to, or just want to hear someone ramble about their hyperfixation for 30 some odd minutes. At any time, if you have a question, please comment down below. I will try to answer all of them either in the comments or in the next episode. So I really hope you guys enjoy, and thank you so much. This episode will be going over General Hex's character from the sequels, while taking a deeper dive into his characterization and why he has become maybe one of the most complex characters in the entirety of Star Wars. If you guys like this episode and want more videos, be sure to leave a like and also hit that subscribe button so you can get notifications on when I upload new videos. So with that being said, let's actually go ahead and dive into this topic. Today's episode was inspired by a tweet, and I'm not going to say the person who tweeted it because they don't need more hate than they already got. And I did respond to it on my own Twitter, which I will link down below. And basically, they said lots of stupid shit and dross, but having Hux go from literally Hitler to a spy helping the good guys is at the top of the list. And I said my thoughts in a small little thread on the Bird app if you would like to take a look at that personally, but I will basically talk about my thoughts here in a wider scope. So first, let's talk about Hux and his characterization in the movie specifically. I will not go into the comic until a little bit because that did get released after, I believe it was after Force Awakens, but it could be also after Last Jedi, which is crazy to me. Like, why did you not give this guy any more characterization that he definitely needed after Force Awakens? Because it was such a hard hitting movie for him specifically and for his character. You have him being a general of the First Order, right? In this First Order, we don't see much of it in the sense of, okay, how did it go, right? We're thinking, okay, it's Empire 2.0. That's basically the simple terms of what the First Order is, but it's so much more than that. It's so much of a regime that was taken from the Empire and perfected into what the First Order is. And Hux, we see him, of course, leading a flagship. But what's so special about him? We have, in the Empire, we had Tarkin, we had Krennic, we had, Stallone, we had all these different generals, Legion generals, um, commanders, and they did their job, right? They weren't special. But what was special about Hux, seeing him in Force Awakens, was his relationship with Kylo Ren and how you saw this Force user, almost like Darth Vader, was at an equal with a general from the First Order. And that was crazy to me to see how it was almost a parallel of, Tarkin and Vader. That, of course, Tarkin had a lot of respect for Darth Vader, and same with Darth Vader had a lot of respect for Tarkin. And with this, you could see they both don't respect each other. They both want to be better than the other, kind of like they're vying for Snoke's, um, you know, kind of little pat on the head that, hey, they're doing a great job, right? And I think that created such a great dynamic for one, Hux's character, but also who he interacted with and why he was even there, in the sense of you have this character that is going against almost the villain. So it's a villain to a villain. And I think a lot of people miss that and miss how special that is for those two characters to have that type of relationship, whereas you don't see a lot in, movies. You have the villain, and then you have, like, the puppeteer of the villain, which would be Snoke, but you never have the villain and kind of the other villain that are vying for each other. And they're both very different characters. I won't talk too much about them because I will delve into other things that, doesn't need to be talked about, but you can't talk about Hux's character without talking about Kylo Ren, or even Snoke, and especially Brendol. And those things are so integral to his story. And I think a lot of people miss that when looking at his character by himself. And I think that's a good thing. It's important to look at a character by themselves and not with other characters. But I think with Hux, it was so integral from the start that you had him in the relationships that he was in. So that was Force Awakens. Of course, you have the amazing scene that Donald Gleason just produced with the amount of rage and fear and determination, in this man to command his army, to, just command, Hostinian Prime destroyed. And you can even see it in his eyes when rewatch it and everything, just how he believes he's doing something correct, right? Let me just get this out of the bat. Hux is a terrible person. I do not condone anything that he did. He is not a good person. He is, when I say he's a good character, I mean he is written well. He, for what they wanted to go, which was almost like a Hitler. But he's not Hitler. I don't like using real world things to describe fictional characters. I do think it is important in the sense of how George wanted to tell, especially OT, and how he wanted that type of political nuance written in his films. But I think you need to look at the bigger picture when talking about a character, that this is all fictional, and that, yes, it does relate to real world issues that did happen, but I like looking at it from the sense of the character. So, like I said, I do not condone anything, but that's all I'm going to say about that. So, his speech, he destroys Justinian Prime, but you could see just not the regret, because it's not regret, and a lot of people get that wrong. It's not regret, it's remorse. It's almost this haunting feeling of, like, he knows what he did and he knows he will never, ever be forgiven, but he still believes that what he did was right. And no matter if he dies with that or if they kill him for that, he will never regret it. He did it for a reason. And this is what he's worked his life for. This is what his father worked him for. This is what Snoke worked him for. This is why he fought with Kylo. This is what he worked for. And I think that was so special and so important to show that you have this man on an equal at the time of Kylo Ren. And that is what really was prevalent about the First Order. And what a lot of people miss is the First Order versus Empire, right? And we have that debate. And Empire and OT was just so not imposing. I'm sorry. If you rewatch a lot of Imperial clips, you don't feel much fear. You get it. They're supposed to be evil. They're supposed to be the bad guys, whatever, right? But you never see much from them. You never see truly. I mean, the closest thing we got was when one of the Ewoks died in Return of the Jedi, and I was just bawling my eyes out. I mean, how could the Empire do that, right? Because you never really had seen them really kill someone that you liked. All the legacy characters survive. Of course, on Endor, you have the big battle, but it's never like you never feel like, whoa, like, okay, these guys are like pretty bad. And in Force Awakens, I think it was done very well. I do suggest reading the novelization for Force Awakens because it does go more into kind of Hostinian Prime and how that's working. I am very hopeful because The Mandalorian season 3 just showed us that, what kind of Coruscant was like and how the New Republic is kind of working. And I do think people watching more of this lead into the First Order and lead into the New Republic, I think a lot more people are going to resonate with Force Awakens. I think a lot more people are going to actually feel something in that scene. But even then, you could see the weight of all those deaths in his eyes. And I think that was so special. And, not really any actor could have done that besides Donal. So I think just that was so important. That was the turning point for his character. Now, of course, we don't see much of his character besides, his precious star killer is all gone. But, and then he, gets Kylo Ren, blah, blah, blah. We don't have that unfortunate scene of him getting Kylo Ren, but that's him in Force Awakens, right? You have this very, very evil man that you don't see much, I hate saying flavor to, but you don't see much of him. It's just kind of like, hey, he's there. He's at an equal with Kylo Ren. You're kind of vying for, okay, what's next for him? Starkiller's defeated. And I think that was where a lot of us were, okay, is he going to die? Are we going to have Hux go through an execution by Snoke? What's the next plan for this character? Because, everything that was set up in the first movie, that's what he worked for, is now just gone, right? So how are we going to see that, and how are we going to see the First Order struggle? Then we go into The Last Jedi, and The Last Jedi was directed by a different director that directed Force Awakens. So you had JJ, then you had Rian Johnson, and then you had JJ come back again. I love Rian Johnson. I think he's a great director. I actually do kind of like Last Jedi. I think over the years, I've grown to appreciate it a lot more. And I think a lot of the sequel movies, or the 3 sequel movies, need a lot of time to simmer, and you need a lot of time to think about them. I won't get into that. I will get into that in a next video. But we see Hux on his flagship being, for a better sense, trolled by Poe Dameron. And, you see him almost cocky, almost like, oh, well, he's insane, right? Why is he going for a dreadnought? And, of course, Poe, that's a whole different thing of, like, he killed many people in that, but that showed important characterization for both of them, right? And I've grown to like their little banter back and forth, but I do think what is said is a bit integral to Hux's character, and I do think that they played it off for laughs a bit too much, especially the line about his mother. I think a lot of us were a bit pissed off in a sense, because for one, I think Donal couldn't really show much reaction to that because they still weren't sure where the character was going to go. But I think he should have had a bit more of a reaction to that, because that's so integral to his story and to his upbringing. So, a couple of lines in that scene, but you see, Hux is trying to grab his life together, basically. He's trying to scrounge for anything that he can get on either Kylo Ren, the Resistance, to bring to Snoke, a bit of dirt so he can get back up in the hierarchy of the First Order. He's still a general. I think it would have been interesting to see him actually lose a rank, and see just how he vied with that. But of course, then he probably wouldn't have been in the movie as much, and I think that would have been a total disservice to him. So anyway, he tells Snoke, yo, the dreadnought, like, yeah, it's done. And Pete is like, yeah, I told you so. And, Snoke smacks him around. He really does. He shows him, he throws him on his face in front of his crew. And a lot of people see that as like, okay, it's slapstick. Like, whatever. You're throwing Hux to the side. That's where this movie is going to lead. But I think it means so much more to him and to Snoke that, Hux is expendable, right? And we even see that with Kylo as well, especially in this movie. It's like Snoke is not a great leader. I'm sorry, he's not, right? And I think that's mainly why he keeps Hux alive, is that Hux is a great leader. He leads the stormtroopers. Everyone kind of looks to him. They don't really respect Kylo Ren, and most of them have not seen Snoke. That's just how it is. I mean, he has Phasma in his back pocket. Like, that's crazy, and something that a lot of people miss is that he literally has Phasma vying for him. Now, of course, she did let down the, tractor shields and, for Starkiller, which led to its destruction. But Hux doesn't kill her when he finds that out in the comic, I said I wasn't gonna talk about the comics, but it's integral. He said he wasn't gonna kill her, and that, he knew it was her, but they didn't really talk about it. And that was even the first time we saw Hux smile. And the fact that Phasma was able to do that is just so telling of both of their characters. And I think that's something a lot of people miss and a lot of people overlook. But of course, it's in a comic, so you can't really blame people for overlooking it when it's not in the movie. But I digress. There are a lot more people that needed screen time in the 3 movies. So Hux is kind of in a place in The Last Jedi to where he's just being thrown around, abused, not really taken seriously. I think the closest thing that we get to him being kind of the Hux that was in Force Awakens was when he's going to execute Rose and Finn. But even then, he doesn't do much, right? It's kind of just like for show. It's more Phasma that's there, and then of course the Holdo maneuver happens, love it. And they get away, of course. So and then of course Hux sees Kylo in the throne room scene. This is where the dynamic changes. And this was hard for a lot of people because, as I said before, Force Awakens, Kylo and Hux were equals, right? They were right next to each other. They were vying for Snoke, like next to each other. Then you have the throne room scene. Beautiful, choreographed, amazing. Love it. And then Hux is going to shoot Kylo, which was like crazy, right? Everyone was like, oh, we were not expecting that. But then Kylo wakes up and he puts it away, which I hate so much. I mean, it was right there. And you're kind of wondering what's going through his mind, right? I mean, of course, probably through Rian Johnson's mind was like, yeah, no, we can't kill off Adam Driver. We're not doing that. I mean, imagine the uproar of people if Hux was like the main villain of TROS. Now, a lot of people have talked about that legitimately, but I do think it would have just been too much and just it would have been probably not great. And I hate saying that because I love Hux as a character, but I'm saying that as a lover of Hux and that it probably would have been very, very bad. But also then you're kind of like, hey, why didn't he shoot him? Why did that not happen? And part of me thinks it's like remorse, right? Because Kylo got beaten by Rey a second time because girl boss. And, you know, I don't, it's hard, to think of what Hux was even thinking. And, you know, all of that. I mean, I still haven't even processed kind of how I feel about that scene. But I don't think it was out of character for him. I think he would have done it, but I think this is my headcanon, so bear with me. I think he saw himself, right? He was bested. He killed Snoke, right? Kylo killed Snoke. That's just a given, even though he said it was the Rey. But I guess kind of Rey helped him, so I guess he's not technically lying, but he killed him. And Kylo was right laying on the floor, like devastated. And I think for a second, like a split second, that Hux thought of himself and thought of what he had been through. And I think there was a moment to where he thought that he can get on the same level as Kylo Ren again. I truly thought without Snoke. And I think he truly thought that, hey, maybe we could team up and do this together and actually bring down you, go out and do your whole lightsaber thing, and I stay here commanding the stormtroopers. Now, of course, that is not what happens. And unfortunately, Kylo kind of sees him caught in the act and he chokes him, which honestly valid. If someone, pointed a gun at me while I was down, I would, my first reaction would be to, want to kill him. So honestly valid. I'm never kind of mad at that scene. It's kind of like what Hux has coming to him, but in the sense of like, maybe it could have worked out. Maybe it would have worked out. But you never really kind of know in that sense. And, even Hux kind of says in a moment of desperation, like, you presume to command my army, right? And he thinks of himself as the sole leader almost of the First Order. I mean, is that so bad of him thinking that though? Because Snoke did nothing, absolutely nothing other than train Kylo, right? Of course, from what we've seen. And that was like his whole thing. And Hux really took the First Order to the next level. Of course, he was collaborating with different generals. I'm not saying he was the only one that, controlled everything, but he was the sole commander of the First Order. He really was. Kylo didn't do much, Snoke didn't do much, and he felt entitled to that position. And, the position of Supreme Leader, and he felt that he could change the First Order for the better, right? That be with Kylo or without him, honestly. And Kylo doesn't see it that way. And he goes ahead and chokes Hux. And, it's just like, you know what? Nope, we're not doing this. I'm your supreme leader now. And you fall in line under me. I'm going to win us this war. And I think Hux at that moment, he knows he's on like a very thin thread of like, Kylo will kill me. He will. He's not going to stop. So I need to make myself important. And I need to make myself kind of unkillable. I know that's not the right word, but that's the word I'm going to use. And in that sense, you really get to see how, especially when they go down to Crate. I mean, he thinks Kylo's an idiot, which, he's not wrong because Kylo, he's all about emotions, right? But with Hux, and especially his upbringing, his emotions were hidden. He thought very logically and very, he accounted for almost everything. And he never thought with it. He never fought with his emotions. He fought with his brain. He fought with his mind. And I think that was so important for them to show. And I think Rian Johnson did a great job of that, especially in the shuttle scene with Kylo and Hux. Of course, there was a bit of banter between them as well, where, Hux says what Kylo said before, still thinking himself above Kylo, which is almost laughable, but I think Kylo at this point does not care. He kind of pushes Hux to the side, saying, you know what? You're not important. I don't care about you. I'm not going to give you the time of day to, you keep commanding, quote unquote, your army, technically my army, and we will be fine. But you still are under me, and I need you to realize that. And I think Hux does. I think he does, but he doesn't want to admit it. So then Kylo throws him, against the shuttle and blah, 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 shuts him up in front of his crew and, I think it was Peavy in that shuttle. I could be wrong. But there was someone important in that shuttle, and they saw him get thrown against. No, it probably wasn't Peavy. No, because I think Peavy died, correct? Ooh, I don't know. I have to do research on that. But it was almost just in the sense of, yeah, that's it. That's it for Hux, right? Us watching that movie, we're like, what the hell? Why has this man who didn't blink when he destroyed Hostinian Prime, is now reduced to a, lowly pile on the floor by his new supreme leader. And I think it's important to show that that truly wasn't Hux's fault, but he kind of pushed a bit too far. And I think it was always going to come to that point. I think it could have not gone any differently. I think if Kylo and him talked a bit, then probably it could have. But I think it's integral to realize, like, his story was always going to end like that. In The Last Jedi. So then, going on to Tross, we have the introduction of Allegiant General Pryde, which, that character rings a bell. I wonder why. Well, maybe because he was friends with, Hux's father, and also kind of alluded to that he abused him as a child. Now, that's kind of written in the lines. I don't know if that's absolutely canon, but I think that's what a lot of the community has worked with, in that sense of, Pryde didn't really respect him, and he wanted to almost have Hux's position, but closer with Kylo. Kylo didn't care. He was so focused on Rey. Like, this man was like, he was literally like, I don't care. I don't even care showing up to your meetings unless it has something to do with the girl. So Hux at this point is just, he's done. He is absolutely done. And you have to think from his perspective. I mean, getting thrown around, your thing that was going to make you probably famous within the order, destroyed, even though you like destroyed those 5 planets or Hostinian Prime. No one cares. It's more the fact that they don't have that weapon anymore to scare other planets and the resistance, right? And he doesn't have that anymore. So he still has the rank of general, which I'm still kind of like, okay, but I don't know how kind of ranking works in the First Order. I'm still kind of new to that, learning on that, because, realistically, I do think it would have been kind of important to lessen his rank even to a lieutenant or an officer and kind of have him below. But I think it was enough and enough storytelling to have him below Pride, have his flagship, the Finalizer, taken away. And now he works for under Pride. And quite honestly, from what we see somewhat in the movie, is he's nothing. He's nothing. He's not. He's being glared at and argued with in high command. He's at his low point. And then we find out that there's a spy for the resistance in the First Order. And I think that was with everyone that we all thought it was going to be General Pride. Everyone. Now, I won't say everyone, because there were definitely some people that were like, it probably is Hux. I thought it was Pride. I'll be completely honest, because you get this new character that's, characterized by Richard E. Grant, greatest actor of like all time, love him. And you get this guy coming in, and it's kind of like, hey, why haven't we truly like heard from you besides like a very tiny article on Wikipedia? Why have you not been summoned and stuff? And then of course it leads into Palpatine and Exegol and the Final Order and all of that. I won't get too much into that because I will devote a separate video to talking about TROS. It's not bad. I don't hate it. I think that would be a fun video to do because there's a lot of good things in that movie. But Hux, bringing back his abuser for one, and then putting him under him, and losing everything. Oh yeah, no. I think Hux would not stand for that. No matter what he had been through and what he believed in the First Order. He knew that Kylo Ren was not a good Supreme Leader, that High Command was like wanting to go back to the Empire, that they didn't want to move forward with the First Order. They want to go back with Palpatine. That Hux knew, like, no, this is not going to work, for one, in my favor, and this is not going to work in the First Order's favor. And I think that's really his turning point of, you know what, I'm going to use my enemy's tools and use their motivations to further my own motivations. And I think that's almost so poetic in a way of Hux kind of doing a last stand against the own regime that he built. Not that he's redeeming himself at all. I still necessarily don't believe in the Kylo Ren, Ben Solo redemption type thing, because I feel like being redeemed is never truly enough. I even feel that Darth Vader and Anakin, right? Darth Vader, I truly believe, never got redeemed. He still lives with that, but the fact that, Luke forgave him in a sense. So I digress. But redemption really wasn't ever in the cards. And especially a lot of people miss too, he lost Phasma. Can we just let that sink in for a second? He lost the only person that could make him smile, the only person that knew that Brendol abused him, in the sense, the only person that had his back, maybe the only one that ever had his back. And she's dead. She's gone, right? I still don't think she died, but we're looking at the canon movies. she's dead. So the fact that she's dead, he's probably gonna die soon. He, wants to stick it to the First Order one last time and work with the Resistance. And it's not that shocking when you think about it. And he even says, I don't care if you win, I want Kylo Ren to lose. Now, everyone memes that photo. I do love the memes of it, though. Like, send those my way. Like, they're beautiful. But he doesn't care if the Resistance wins. He doesn't care if the Final Order wins. He doesn't care. He's going to die anyway, right? And I think he's finally accepted that. But he wants Kylo to lose because he has destroyed his life. And it's almost so petty. But I think that's such Huck's character. That's so Hux's character, of him being so petty to even think that, hey, you know what? If I'm not going to be able to shape the First Order how I want it, and I was molded to this type of, human being, I would rather die knowing that it got all destroyed and that it almost never happened. And honestly, that's very poetic. And I think that a lot of people miss that in his character. And a lot of people overlook that. And I think it's important that you don't overlook that. And yes, is he a bad person? Absolutely. He's such a bad person. Worst person probably in the galaxy for a hot minute. But I think you need to take a deeper dive into where he's at and if it was a good decision for him. And I think it was maybe the best decision that he made in the entirety of the 3 films. Even if it was for his own gain, I'm not saying that he was good for doing it, but he did a good thing, and that was help the Resistance, right? And sometimes that doesn't matter. Sometimes it doesn't matter what your actions were, but if in the end you help out the good guys, it doesn't redeem you, does not redeem you, but at least you die doing something for the winning side. And that is why I love my lovely AO3, because we can write stories that kind of go after the war and kind of see Hux change into the better person that he honestly probably should have been without his father and his upbringing, which we are going to get into right now. So, talking about the Hux comic, which was great, and of course we were supposed to get a couple of novelizations. I will even talk a bit about the Phasma book, because it's one of my favorite books. Actually, is my favorite Star Wars book. I would totally suggest reading it. Dahlia S. Dawson is chef's kiss. She's amazing. I love her. Such a great writer. And the book is very, very good. So let's first talk about the comic. Basically, we see Kylo and Hux, on a planet and they crash land. And, to come to find out, spoilers, that it was Brooks that kind of planned Hux's assassination, who actually abused Hux as a child with Brendol. And in the end, like I said, spoilers, Hux kills him and, goes on with his life. And in these flashbacks, we see literally him serving drinks to his father, and I believe it's Brooks, and he spills them accidentally, a little clumsy, and his father demands that he licks up the juice in the glass off the floor. I mean, that's like next level. Like, whoa. It doesn't sound dark and you're kind of like, okay, like whatever, but like, what? Like, no, I'm sorry. That's like a little much. So when seeing that, you're like, whoa, that makes sense why he's like kind of hates everything and everyone. And we we come to learn more about his upbringing, and especially with his mother and how she was a kitchen woman that, of course, Brendol had an affair with. and which then, was Hux was a product of that kind of, I won't say relationship, but transaction, um, for the Arcanist Academy. And I think that's so integral to his story, to his upbringing. I think a lot of people miss. But that's kind of the thing for sequels, is that we don't get to see much of these people's backstories. And that's just with everyone. Of course, Finn's is still a mystery, but we don't get to see much of Rey's. We hardly get to see any of Kylo's, or Ben's if you prefer. And, which is just terrible. Even Poe's as well, but he's got some in a comic, which I think is, good for what it is. The fact that that happens is very integral to his story and something that a lot of people miss. Going into the Phasma book, we learn more, very much, the characterization of Brendol, and he is not a nice man. And you can only imagine the horrors of what Armitage had to go through, and of what Phasma went through with her own planet. And I think that created kind of a bond between Phasma and Armitage and all of that. I just realized I've been calling him Hux the entire time. That's just easier for me. I love the name Armitage. So I apologize. I hope it wasn't too confusing. But Armitage, Hux, very much love that name. And you kind of get to see that other side of him and see that side of like, wow, and also his hatred for the New Republic because of Arcanus getting bombed by the New Republic. And a lot of people miss that, when they're doing information, kind of on this character, and they miss that happened. Some people are like, oh, well, we don't really get to see his hatred of the New Republic. Why is he so personal? If he's destroying the Hostanian Prime, but the fact is that something personal very much happened to him, and that was super integral. And of course, that wasn't shown in the movie, and I think it would have been so great if these movies were a bit longer so we'd show that, but it's definitely very integral to his own story. And yeah, so he's just such an important character, and everything that he's been through really leads up to his meaning in these 3 movies. And I think that's something a lot of people miss. No hate to anyone who thinks his characterization is stupid, thinks his character is stupid. But I think it's important for us to take a look into really what made him who he was, what made him the general of the First Order. And looking back through all of this and kind of talking about his character, I don't even know if there's a way for me to hate him. Of course what he did was terrible, but just in the sense of, you understand his motivations. I think that's why Star Wars is so beautiful. So you take a villain, even such as Darth Vader, the villain of villains, and you can see why he did it. You can see why he chose the dark side for Padme, ending up killing her. You could see that. It's not crazy accusations for you to just go, oh yeah, no, he was just feeling the dark side, like whatever, and all of that. No, it was very integral to his character. And I think that's what's so special about Star Wars, is you can have these great villains, but really get to show how they became a villain. And, in their eyes, they know what they're doing, is right in their mind. But in the reality of things, of course, the rebellion's gonna win. Of course, you gotta have the good guys win. And I think that's what I like about Star Wars as well, is that, of course, it does show with a couple of things where the Empire wins and everything, or the First Order wins, but rebellions are built on hope. to quote the great Jyn Erso. And I think that every Star Wars character, even not in the Rebellion, holds out some sort of hope. Now, if that hope helps people or if it doesn't, I think that's also something to look at. But yeah, man, I love this character. And I really hope you guys enjoyed this video. Like I said, the tweet really inspired me, so thank you if you know who you are. And yeah, so thank you all so much for listening. If you guys have any ideas of what you want me to talk about next, leave it in the comments. I'm thinking about doing an episode on Indiana Jones and the Dial of Destiny, kind of giving my quick review on that. I'm thinking about doing a Disneyland video, and very much talking about the state of Disneyland and, you know, the state of Universal and all of that with theme parks. And then I might do, I don't know, you know, I got a whole bunch of ideas. I might do a Tales of the Jedi video and talk about Tales of the Jedi for a bit, but it just depends on how well this video does. So if you enjoyed, please leave a like. Don't forget to subscribe. And if you want to follow me on Twitter for updates or just anything concerning mainly the Kylux fandom, but I will tweet about other Star Wars things as well, then give me a follow at AdventureCat. So thank you all so much, and I hope you have a good rest of your day.